There certainly is no business like show business.
Without a doubt, Les was one of the biggest comedic performers in the country.
Whatever he did, he turned it to gold. You know, he just had that magic touch.
He was a presenter, he was a game show host.
Right.
Oh. He was a musician.
He was a great gag teller, he was a great storyteller.
I went to the doctor last week. I said, can I have some sleeping pills for the wife? He said, why? I said, she's woke up.
Quite simply, there is no other comedian, either then or now, quite like Les Dawson.
Darling, would you tell your dear mother her bath's ready?
Chief, no. Last week we had coq au vin.
Oh, we tried that once, but there was no room in our mini.
At the peak of his career in 1993, my husband Les was just about to host an audience with.
An audience with says that, you know, you've made it, you're there, you're a star.
As the producer of the show, I can tell you, Les was incredibly excited and everything was ready.
But just 2 weeks before we were due to record the show, Les sadly died.
This is the 20th anniversary of my husband's death. He'd be so excited that we're making the show that he never got to make.
To use this incredible hologram technology to bring comedy like this into a big studio, it's an incredibly groundbreaking thing to do.
I just love my dad back for one day, and I can't believe that I'm actually going to see him face to face.
The thought of Les Dawson coming back as a hologram fries my tiny mind.
He's back. Go on, Les. Make us laugh.
7 years ago, Les Dawson was about to join the exclusive list of stars that did an audience with. It was a show of great prestige. It was almost like sort of being made a superstar. Are you here for the night, dear? What are you...
You peek through a hole in the curtain before you go, oh, because you see all those famous faces in front of you.
I think it'd be a good idea now if all the ugly ones came down and sat near the front. You have? Good. Well, listen.
An audience with is always a show that Les had wanted to do, so when we invited him, he was just over the moon.
You've been asked to do an audience with Les Dawson. How do you feel about this?
I'm quite honoured in a way, I suppose.
Who's going to be in the audience, do you know?
Well, I don't know. These are all the pros, and they've got some surprise guests. All I'm concentrating on is trying to get some stuff together for it.
The set was signed off and ready to be built. The audience was booked. We were ready. We were ready to make this show.
The comedian Les Dawson has died at the age of 59.
He collapsed at a hospital in Manchester after going there for an outpatient's appointment.
The award-winning comedian had suffered heart and lung problems for the last 7 years, but recently reformed.
He just asked me to go and get a coffee in a newspaper, and obviously when I came back, he died.
Very, very sad time for everybody. The whole nation mourned the passing of Les.
Les's memorial service was just full of love. Everybody was there for Les because they loved Les.
I was only 8 months old when my dad died. It's so sad because I never really got to know him.
Oh, you nearly smiled then.
It's an amazing feeling to sit here 20 years later and feel that we're honouring him. This was the show he so wanted to make, and it's the show he so should have made.
I do miss him terribly, but, you know, this hologram is just amazing for Charlotte and I.
Yes, that was you, Charlotte. You brought such joy into our lives. And there's your little cot over there.
Obviously, I've never experienced seeing my dad as an adult, so it's going to be such a surreal moment, and I can't wait to see it.
We've travelled from the north, from Blackpool, to see Les.
Which we're so excited about and so nervous.
I've not slept for months, and part of me is very excited, but I'm very emotional, obviously, to have Les back, and it's just wonderful that we've got this hologram.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for allowing me in your wonderful homes.
It's just wonderful, wonderful to see him come alive and
surreal. It was just
amazing, absolutely amazing.
When I was born, Mother was so overjoyed the midwife had to slap her to stop her from screaming.
I've always wanted to meet my dad and just finally got the opportunity. I just wanted to reach out and touch him and I just wanted to cuddle him, and it was just so amazing to see him, and his mannerisms and everything, it's just spot on.
My God, it was worth waiting 20 years. I forgot then, for that moment when I watched him, that, you know, he was still here with us because it was so believable. He'd have just adored this.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage for the first time in 20 years, Les Dawson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for allowing me in your wonderful homes. In an attempt to bring a soup song of amusement, to lighten the shadows of mundane reality. Firstly, I should like to thank Fire TV for allowing me to work here. Secondly, to thank the wife and kids for making it necessary. And the biggest vote of thanks must go to my parents for that brief moment of indiscretion all those years ago behind a brewery. Which resulted in me being here now. How they loved me, Mummy and Daddy. When I was born, Mother was so overjoyed the midwife had to slap her to stop her from screaming. And Daddy was such fun to be with. He was always up to mischief. When I was christened, he put piranha fish in the font. The games we played. Blind man's buff on Beachy Head. Hide and seek. He was very good at it. He'd hide and I'd have to find him. Cardiff, Glasgow, Edinburgh. Twice he used to take me out deer shooting, which I thoroughly enjoyed. The only thing I didn't like was when he made me run through the forest with antlers on my cap. But I think I loved Dad most when he pretended to be annoyed. Like the time we went shark fishing and I fell off the hook. Happy memories of a happy childhood.
Les was one of the most famous faces on telly for over 20 years.
He was one of the few who had enormous presence on television. So distinctive.
People loved him, and that's the mark of a great star.
A wonderful stillness which conveyed this awesome, funny, comic power.
I went to the doctor today, said, what's good for wind? He gave me a kite.
His dressing room was always open for you to go and have a drink with him.
He just knows and graces, he was just down to earth.
I did pantomime with Les, and he loved making me laugh. So I'd be sort of in the middle of a song, and then he'd go like that to me.
He loved working with other comedians.
Good evening, here is the news.
John Cleese was a great admirer of Les. We used to cheerfully call them the odd couple.
Everybody likes to have themselves made a bit of a fool of.
Do you know, you make me laugh. You come in here, you don't bother with a hairdresser.
Les did it in a very special way.
All the best, you look like a black banana.
A twinkle about him and a warmth that made it not malicious.
I told you to stay in the truck.
I just had to look at Les and I'd start to laugh.
Mother? they did.
What was amazing about Les's gurning, a lot of people don't know, is that he was a bit of a boxer in his younger days, and one of the reasons he was able to move his jaw to that position was he actually broke his jaw in a fight once.
The oldest form of humour was pulling faces.
He just had a naturally very funny face.
Les made gurning an art form.
I think Les's most famous face is probably something like this.
Well, he would do that, wouldn't he?
That's very good, that, Tommy. That's not gurning, that's natural.
I think with Les Dawson, he also created all of these memorable characters.
How do?
The one that really sticks in my mind, amongst all these brilliant canopy of characters, were the two women, Cissy and Ada.
The hotels here are wonderful.
Oh,
the food is beyond compare. Oh, wonderful. Mm. Have you had the shish kebab?
Ever since we arrived.
Everyday things made Les laugh. Just listening to conversations of people in restaurants, people on buses, or whatever.
Have you ever experienced the thrill of a Roman Polanski?
Very nearly once, but Bert got cramp in his knees.
Some of my favourite stuff that Les came out with, and I suppose it's synonymous for now, the mother-in-law jokes and the wife gags.
As me and the wife don't get on, it's no secret. She said to me the night in bed, she said, "You're no good to me. I want a man who can hold me like Rock Hudson, thrill me like Kirk Douglas, and make me blood pound like Marlon Brando. What can you do?" I said, "Go fetch me teeth and I'll bite you like Lassie."
The wife ran off with my next-door neighbour. Oh, I do miss him.
I took the wife to Whipsnade Zoo, but they haven't got room for her.
You know you didn't really mean it.
The wife said, "How would you like to speak to Mummy?" I said, "Through a spiritualist."
He loved his own mother-in-law at the time, I remember, and she treated him with great good humour, like, "Oh, here he goes again."
Now, the wife wanted us to have a big wedding in a big church. Well, it had to be a big church to get her mother in.
There was a reaction after his real-life mother-in-law died when he just felt, "I can't be doing this anymore," and then people wanted to know where the mother-in-law jokes were.
He used to get lots of letters, particularly from the mother-in-laws, saying, "Why don't you mention us anymore, Les?" And he brought it back into the act.
She used to stand there with her arms akimbo, the mother-in-law, massive arms. When she folded them, it was like looking at two sides of gammon in a stranglehold.
Les had a very special comedic quality, and I don't think anybody has come up to him since.
Perhaps you join me in a small sing-song. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, where would we be without good music? Here. Do you know, I never slept a wink last night. I kept getting this hideous recurrent nightmare that I was an old sports car and the wife's mother had a foot on my throttle. I lay there in my trundle bed in a bemused stupor, and I gazed around at the familiar things. The rotting floorboards, the peeling wallpaper, the fly-spattered naked 40-watt bulb, the mouse droppings on the dresser, the sack thrust at the broken window, and I thought, by God, you're doing well for yourself, Len. The wife was sleeping like a log. She had her head in the fireplace. As usual, she was snoring with all the rhythmic grace of a gastric bullock. I bent across and kissed her gently on the black eye patch. She stirred and yawned. And with her having no teeth, it was rather like leaning over the rim of a damp bucket. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the wife's ugly. But last Christmas, she stood on the mistletoe waiting for someone to kiss her, and she was still there at Lent. In fact, she went to see that film, The Elephant Man, and the audience thought she was making a personal appearance. From the other bedroom came the sound of the mother-in-law playing a record of Hitler's speeches. She'd obviously had a drink. She was firing a lure into the cat cinders. But that reminded me, I thought, how music has affected my life ever since I was a kid. At the age of 5, my dad gave me a packet of sandwiches and a bugle. And he opened the front door, he said, blow. Because Dad was great. I mean, my father used to actually collect old musical instruments, but he was very absent-minded because people used to come to the house to ask him where he'd put the lute. Mummy was a marvellous singer. She had a great voice. She could sing till the cows came home. And when she did sing, it sounded as though they'd arrived. In show business, probably the most prominent member of my family was my great-aunt Margaret. She was the last of the Gaiety girls in Edwardian London. And men used to drink champagne from a slipper and throw roses at her as she danced. She was 96 when she died, with damp feet and green fly. So my parents were determined that I should carry on the family tradition of music, and for over 7 years I sweated on the piano stool, and then things got better. They bought me a piano. And Dad was great. Then I used to sit there with my chubby little fists hitting the notes, and Dad was smashing. He used to leap out of bed and help me to keep time by banging the lid up and down on my fingers. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's programme is all about words and music. And I thought, if I started with Grieg's Piano Concerto, you give some idea.
I think the music aspect of Les's comedy was very important because it made him different to a lot of other stand-up comedians.
Whenever you saw a piano and whenever you saw Les walking up to it, you go, here we go.
He learned his craft as a musician before he became a comic.
When he started to sing and do that feeling song, when you watched him, you thought, does he really want to sing?
Trying to forget.
And you think, wow, you know, that's a good voice.
My feelings of love.
Sometimes you think, oh, he's going to sing a song straight today. And then, bang.
And then, of course, there was the wonderful out-of-tune piano playing.
And his face, even when he hit the bum notes, was deadly serious. Like, look at me, I'm playing. Aren't I wonderful?
Yes, you've guessed. It's Melody Hour.
If you didn't play the piano, they'd be shouting, the piano, the piano.
I'd like to play the piano for you. I was going to play you a little something from Mozart, but I won't because he never plays any of mine.
Les took his piano playing very seriously, played the piano every day at home. And he would play classical, and then he'd go into the off-key.
Well, that's enough of the money I'm getting.
So just as he made the piano one of his sidekicks, I mean, who would have thought of making a bunch of girls like the Roly Polys another sidekick?
Big, plumptious girls. Ooh, big, woof. They were good too.
He made them into a cliche very big stars.
People had written in and said we looked like Roly Polys, so the name came and a huge hit.
If you watch them tap dance, they were really light on the feet, particularly more.
He had got to be big. In fact, that was the most important thing.
Your wise exercise on the fat off, take it off, over here, over there.
If he thought they were looking a bit slim, he'd order trays of meat pies and trays of cakes. Come on, girls, let me feed you up.
It just complemented Les's persona. He was a short, chubby, jolly gentleman, and they were short, chubby, jolly ladies.
Some years ago, I went through a pretty bad time. In fact, things were so bad, I went to give a pint of blood and it bounced. In those days, I wasn't in show business. I was working for British Rail. The Buffy, Station Buffy and crew. I was a meat pie reviver. Funny enough, that's where I met the wife. She was working in a discount store in Crewe, and I went in to buy a lampshade. And there was something about the way she was stood behind the counter with the sunlight dappling the dandruff on her shoulders. And hairs on a wart. And I said, "Excuse me, miss, what will you take off for cash?" She said, "Everything by my earrings." In the winter of that year we got married, I always remember it was bitterly cold. In fact, it was so cold outside the church, brass monkeys were lagging one another. And we went through pretty lean times. The wife lost her job. It was unfortunate. She couldn't avoid it. She got rheumatism in her shoulder and she couldn't throw the harpoon properly. And things were pretty bad. We couldn't pay the rent. In fact, the arrears were ticked off in the Doomsday Book. I always remember the furniture was thrown in the street so often we had the loose covers made to match the pavements. And we lived in lousy digs. They were filthy. Well, you could tell what they were like. Every time we dropped a piece of coal on the carpet, it left a white mark. Twice a week, vandals used to break in and decorate it. Things improved. I got a job as an actor. It was my first job in show business as an actor. Yeah. I was in that television saga, upstairs, downstairs. You never saw me. When I was upstairs, the cameras were downstairs. And I toured America in Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. I played the part of Bottom, obviously, with my rotundity and... Well, the Americans raved over it. They couldn't do enough for my Bottom. In Chicago, they wouldn't let me walk anywhere. Every night after the show, big fellas used to come backstage and say, "We've come to take the bum for a ride." But I got my big break. A restoration melodrama of the old Vic. I only have 2 words to say. The words were, "It is." For 3 months at my agent's office where he cleans, I used to stand there and I used to rehearse. It is. It is. It is. It is. The night, the opening night dawned. The auditorium was hushed into expectancy. Cigar smoke hung above the audience like garlands. There was a nervous, almost pathetic desire for people to be involved in this production. One could sense the very atmosphere. The auditorium lights began to dim. Curtains opened. I strode onto the podium with my doublet and hose and my dirk. And I stood in the spotlight and I said, "Is it?" The manager came backstage and said, "You're fired." Well, I said, "You can't fire me. I know the part backwards." happened to that fat oaf, Dawson? Ever get into show business?
I think you have to remember that the success that Les had didn't come overnight. He had to work really hard to get it.
I'm very grateful to be here because the way things are going, if it's true that success breeds success, then I'm on the pill.
I think Les's background was echoed completely in his work.
I mean, I came from a very poor family. Up to the age of 15, I thought knives and forks were jewellery.
Les was born in 1931 in a place called Rehearsal, Manchester, and that was a very deprived area.
I never knew what a pair of shoes was. Dad used to soak my feet in gravy browning and lace up my toes.
And that's where, in amongst all that, internally, he learnt that books had a magic to them, words had a magic to them.
I was pretty stupid as a kid. The only thing I could do was string words together. And I had a love of, prose.
He left school at the age of 14, and I think he was destined to be a writer.
There was one teacher there called Bill Hetherington. He just happened to say about this essay which I'd written about Winter's Day. One day he'll be a writer.
He spent his early days playing in bars in France.
I read somewhere that you once played in a French brothel, is that right?
There wasn't a lot of money, but there was plenty of perks. No! Well, I thought Paris was the place to gravitate to. I mean, it's not really, because there's too many distractions in Paris,
You, in fact, did a lot of other jobs, didn't you, before you made it big? What do you remember most vividly?
I was a vacuum cleaner salesman. And a woman called me in, because I looked so pathetic at the door, and I had a suit that was so shiny, I used to clean it in mirror glass.
While Les spent his days as a salesman, he spent his evenings on the comedy circuit.
So we did the working men's clubs, that's what and he did. And we drove home and he would have done the same. I'm packing in tomorrow. I'm going to get another job, because you've just died. They've crucified you. Horrible.
There are some tough audiences up there,
Oh, my word, there are.
I mean, there's some, yourself, in Barnsley. If they like your act up there, they don't clap, they let you live.
He wasn't getting anywhere at all. He couldn't get into the A-list somewhere.
We're going to pack it in.
When my agent first rang me about this engagement, it came as something of a shock. Because the way the work's been coming, and I thought he'd gone down with the Titanic.
He just couldn't make that break, and he was getting more and more depressed. And his first wife, Meg, had said to him, "Why don't you try Opportunity Knocks?"
Opportunity Knocks was the talent show of the 60s. It was the perfect opportunity for new acts to be seen.
Your host, Huey Green.
We were auditioning in Manchester, and Royston Mayo, who is our director, he said, I have got a chap I've known for years. I'm not going to sit in on the panel today. He said, I just want you to give him a chance, push him in on the auditions.
And as I'm talking to Huey, they're pushing the piano on, and Green said to me, "Oh, no, not another pianist." Of course, Les sat down, and within 10 seconds, Green was falling apart laughing.
Well, you've been such a nice audience, I would like to say that if you're ever in Manchester, come and look us up. The door's always open. We can't shut the damn thing.
He come out and he won that audience.
It literally changed everything for him.
Everybody, but everybody was blown away.
And the door's open for him.
And here he is tonight, Les Dawson.
Mr. Les Dawson!
Les Dawson.
Les Dawson!
Les Dawson, this is your life.
He worked hard for it, and he deserved it.
Out of all of the sketches that Les ever did, the most successful was Cissy and Ada. Wonderful times.
It's a funny-looking baby to me.
It's a bit odd.
I mean, I've never seen one with a cleft chin and 2 warts under its nose.
You're looking at the wrong end.
Cissy and Ada were a classic Formula double act with Roy Barraclough. One rather prissy and precise, and the other one sort of vulgar and loose.
Do you know, they adore my cuisine,
Oh, very nice.
Yes, Fred Earnshaw, he can't wait to get at my gazpacho.
always was a randy little devil, innit?
He was influenced by Norman Evans over the garden wall, the old gossipy old lady.
Who threw that through my window there? Willie Schofield? I'll bet you're real.
Immediately, Les is thinking, that is the absolute blueprint for what we're going to do.
Tell us how Cissy and Ada started.
We used to pre-record loads of sketches in the studio without an audience, and you had to hang around for a long time, and people used to get bored, so Les used to amuse all the crew and the technicians and go into this routine.
We thought it would work well, but we'd no idea how well it was going to work. It just took off almost immediately.
When you went to Blackpool for your honeymoon, were you... This is girl talk, really. Were you Virgo intact?
I was just bed and breakfast.
He got a lot of his material, I would say, from his own mother and his aunt, who worked at the cotton mills.
They couldn't hear themselves speak with the looms, the noise of them, so they used to mouth the words. Has she,
Has she seen you at the doctor's? Well, yes. Is it the old trouble? What trouble?
Woman's trouble.
That reminded me of me mum and Auntie Nellie, and I loved all that. You know, the pushing up of the right boob or the left boob or whatever.
Burke calls this brownies Grand National Brassiere.
Why?
£5 each way.
Some women in Lancashire were just like Cissy and Ada. Roy Barraclough's Cissy character reminded me of the woman at St Anne's Social Centre who gave me the sack when I was a glass collector. She said, you took that glass too soon, there was still tuppence worth left in it. Characters were everywhere. And Ada, you know, she'd sit with her legs apart like that, you know, showing the directory knickers, that sort of thing.
What are you doing? She's damn ridiculous. Like climbing an Alp.
Hated rehearsals. He'd do anything not to rehearse, you know. He'd go through a sketch once and then say, well, that'll be all right now.
He'd thrown his script away. He knew it. That was Monday. Tuesday, Wednesday, he's now getting bored of doing the same thing all over again. So he was messing about and changing it.
I had no idea that at one time you'd been a thespian.
Oh, I never was.
Some sketches were unrecognisable by Thursday. And we'd say, we're doing it tomorrow, Les. And he did behave himself. He'd pull back and start doing it the way he'd originally done it for the Fridays.
He wanted to save his best take for the audience.
I haven't seen Bert for 3 months. What's he doing?
3 months.
Les and Roy would like to try and make each other laugh, and that made it even funnier. It was really lovely when you could see that they couldn't say their next line because they were laughing.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's ruined Florrie's Cream Lagoon, hasn't it?
Whatever you do, just have a laugh. That's all it's about. Have a laugh, because if it's not fun, it's not worth doing. And I think that was his maxim throughout his career.
No, Luke! It'll bring your shingles back! Very outstanding, isn't it?
It's positively dynamic. I wonder who sculpted it.
I don't know, but it certainly wasn't short of clay. I'd like to, if I may, play you a memorable song, one that is forever in our thoughts. It's a truly unforgettable number, and that's why it's called Unforgettable. Thank you. I've forgotten it. Please forgive me if I appeared down in the mouth this evening, but I've just had some bad news. Tomorrow it's the mother-in-law's funeral. She's cancelled it. Actually, despite the things I say about that that woman, I'm very fond of her. When she was ill last year, I said to the wife, I said, don't worry about your mother. If she's at death's door, I'll pull her through. She went for a swim, Loch Ness and the Montserrat, and Piccadilly the Lake. I haven't seen her for about a fortnight. So it's a fortnight ago, I was in a public house with dubious distinction. I can imagine how I felt. There she was, lying on the floor of the 4-ale bar in a pool of spilt Britvic and chewed cashew nuts. 6 men from an oil rig were hitting her with bar stools. One of my neighbours said, "You're going to help?" I said, "No, 6 of them should be enough."
Blankety blank, blankety blank, boom boom.
Blankety blank, blankety blank, blankety blank.
Blankety blank!
In the 80s, Blankety Blank was the show to do. People adored it at home.
Let's get one thing straight from the word go. I'm only here because I owe money.
Terry had made it a great success to begin with, and then Les took that over.
It was such a good idea to follow a dull old presenter like me with a really good stand-up comedian like that.
See, this is the first time I've hosted a quiz show. And quite frankly, I feel about as comfortable as a lame turkey sat on a pile of Paxo listening to Christmas carols.
He was the natural successor to Terry Wogan.
I used to get it right when Terry was here.
I'm getting up to here with Wogan.
What was great about Les when he took over from Terry Wogan on Blankety Blank was he had no respect for the game show.
It's things like this that makes the show what it is, a failure.
No respect for the contestants.
That dress is smashing. I love last year's fashions.
He had no respect for it at all.
With Les, if he did something wrong, they usually kept it in the programme, rather than him being embarrassed for the fact that he'd forgotten something.
Tracy.
Tracy?
Oh, no. Stacey.
He had that rare gift. People positively wanted to be insulted by Les because he could insult you without a trace of offensiveness.
Bandstand.
Bandstand.
Damn, I don't talk. And then afterwards, he'd always say to everybody, "Oh, thanks for having a bit of fun, you know, that's all it was." And he'd say, "Of course it was, darling."
I've never heard such rubbish.
The beauty of Les was that he could give an innuendo and it just worked perfectly.
Little John and Mary were playing at being doctors. She had him on the operating table and decided to cut off his blank or blank.
Les adored it when the contestants got totally unsuitable prizes.
You won a dry flower display.
Everything about that programme was perfect for Les's character. He made iconic television.
Les did Blankety Blank for 7 years. He did a wonderful job.
You're not going to empty-handed. You're taking back that shirt you're wearing. Also, you're blanking back checkbook and pen.
He was a wonderful storyteller, and there was nobody better at building up a story.
As soon as I saw her, I fell in love. I know she wasn't a beauty in the accepted sense. I mean, she was so thin, I don't know why she wore a brassiere. I've seen bigger lumps in oatmeal.
It wasn't necessarily the material, it was the way he used the language, the way he built it all up.
But I loved her with every fibre of my being, and to me, she was everything. And then one night, we went back to her flat, and 1,000 to 1 quirk of fate. Something you could never anticipate. She fell asleep on a waterbed and the house caught fire and she was poached to death.
He was doing one-liners. He was so good at doing the story in between.
One day I was selling my office. The curtains were drawn, but the rest of the furniture was real.
It's like a little heart machine. The narrative is like that, and then now and again, just a joke like that.
Just then a letter came under the door. It brought tears to my eyes. It was written on an onion.
I think it was his wordplay that made him so distinctive.
I went to our local doctor the other week. I walked in the surgery. I said, "Can you help me out?" He said, "Certainly. Which way did you come in?"
It's just a classic when he's describing observing the night sky in all of its majesty.
As I looked at the myriad of stars twinkling like pieces of quicksilver thrown carelessly onto black velvet.
As Mars and Jupiter lay festooned in their orbital belts.
Ladies and gentlemen, I sat there and I shivered and I thought I must put some slates on this lavatory.
Just beautiful.
He had a very serious side to him. He was a very serious writer, wanted to be a journalist originally.
He worked tirelessly at home through the night many, many times, writing, playing with words, juxtaposing ideas.
I used to be a British secret agent. I was known as 003 and 58. We were so poor that the mice in the kitchen used to set traps for us.
Although Les is not with us any longer, we all keep getting reminders of him. Brendan O'Carroll with Mrs. Brown's Boys. You know there's an influence in there.
Cross-dressing, you know, he made that popular, you know, and yet he never looked like a woman. If you look at Little Britain, David Williams never looks like a woman.
Les Dawson was one of the people that blazed the trail for oiks like me to be able to use flowery language.
He had a humour that will never, ever date.
I can't think of him without laughing.
One of the outstanding comedians in British life.
We can really say, me and Tommy, that I don't think we'll ever see another storyteller like Les Dawson. He was the master.
He was brilliant.
I'm extremely proud to be Les Dawson's daughter. He was just such a brilliant comic. He was a great storyteller. And the best of all, he was my dad.
There are many ills in this world that can depress the human spirit. Pestilence, plague, famine, drought, the evil drummers of war. But even these horrors pale into insignificance when compared to that ultimate folly of man's own making, the wedding reception. Now, I can dimly understand why people get married. Because if it wasn't for marriage, men and women would have to fight with strangers. But I cannot comprehend the reason for that sacrificial feast afterwards. Because, let's face it, the average wedding reception is about as enjoyable and as interesting as listening to Open University on a debate on the workings of a ferret's saliva gland. In Polish. Much against my will, the other week I was dragged off to a wedding. It was the marriage of the wife's eldest sister, Maud. The fact that she was getting married came as a somewhat emotional tremor, because the lady in question had been on the shelf for so long she was beginning to ferment. It was a cold, drizzly day. We all huddled in the church, looking like refugees from a Zeppelin raid. I looked at the bridegroom, who was a dwarf from Luton. He was wearing a set of hired tails. I'm not saying he looked a mess, but Moss Brothers were picketing the vestry. The vicar looked at the bridegroom, he looked at the wife, he looked back at the bridegroom, he said, "Do you take this woman, or will you have her delivered?" Choir boys took the blinkers off, the hideous ceremony ground to a halt, and we trooped off to the wedding reception, which was held in a vast Gothic quarp hall the size of Wembley. They'd hired a three-piece band that was so lousy, every time a waiter dropped a tray, we all got up and danced. The wife's family went to the running buffet like a shoal of piranha fish. In fact, the struggle for the sausage rolls got so fierce, Henry Cooper did the commentary. And the catering was a mess. The boiled ham had been cut so thin, somebody shouted to a waitress, "You deal and I'll shuffle." The sherry was weak and warm and obviously a cheap one. I don't know who trod the grapes for it, but in my glass there was a corn plaster. The dreary night rolled on. The mother-in-law got drunk and stood on a chair singing all the songs she'd learnt as a stormtrooper. Mercifully, it all came to an end when the bride picked up her husband and they went off in a van to Fleetwood. Which I thought was an odd choice for winter, but as she said, well, you're always handy for a deck chair. The wife got very emotional, she said. She said, look at them, she said. She said, I can just see them on the first night in the hotel. It'll be like that television series, The Lovers. I said, with the difference in size, it'll be more like Mission Impossible.
I didn't see a hologram. I saw Les. He looked so real, he seemed so real.
I feel very moved by the whole thing.
I loved every minute of it. God bless old Les. We love it.
I just simply enjoyed Les's performance, and that was just how an audience with Les would have been.
Les was definitely there with us. It was amazing. This is beyond my dreams. It's wonderful.